Welcome to Coffee with the Candidates. This is Nancy and Andy of Yankton Thrive, and we have Ryan Heine with us here today, and he is running for one of the 3 spots on the Yankton County Commission. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born here in Yankton, brought home to a little house on Deer Boulevard, not far from where I live now. Moved over to the home place. My father took over the home place in St. Helena, Nebraska, when I was about 3 years old. So I grew up on a farm there, know a lot about cattle. From there, I went off to college. I have 5 brothers, so someone had to go leave the farm. So I went off to college. I got a degree in physics and electrical engineering from St. Louis University. Immediately after school, I actually turned down NASA and went to defense industry. From there, defense industry into intelligence industry. And then after 20 years of doing that and having all these clearances and all these other things, I kind of wanted to take a step back and do something a little more relaxing. So I went to the traffic industry and currently work for Image Sensing Systems in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Well, along the way, I've been able to build my career to where I can live anywhere I wanted to, and so obviously I decided to come home to Yankton. What really drew me is to be back close to the ag roots that I grew up with. It's kind of like that first love. I've always dreamed I would be retiring to a nice farm or ranch. So so I moved back about in 2014. In 2012, I married Michelle Donner. She's from Hardington, high school sweetheart, you could say. And we have 5 kids, a blended family. The 3 oldest are often graduated, 2 youngest are go to school here in Yankton at Sacred Heart. And when we moved up here in 2014 from Omaha. We brought along her growing business, Counterfeit Catering, and that's grown quite big, and it's going to be very busy next week.
And it's delicious.
And also that's when we started our farm, 6th Meridian Hop Farm, so down there in West Yankton. And so it's been a very great adventure coming back home to Yankton, get our kids back into some of this ag roots, away from the city, and really kind of looking forward to living the rest of my days here in Yankton. So
you having such a diverse background outside of the hop industry was one of the things that surprised me when I was learning about your background during the primary, that there's just a lot of diversity in there that most people might not be aware of.
Yeah, that is very true. As an engineer, any company I go to, even now I'm a principal engineer, and it's really because I'm all over the place. I'm sort of a jack of all trades when it comes to engineering. I'm doing everything from working on physical mounting hardware to designing a chip. I do a lot of things. Anywhere that the company needs me, I usually jump in, and so that's been what's made me valuable as an engineer is my ability to jump into just about any area. That's also why I've been somewhat successful, as hop farmers are, and as much as they can be in the Midwest, is that, on the farm or in the kitchen, I'm always able to just jump in wherever I'm needed. So
what are some of the other skills that you have that will differentiate you from the other candidates for county commission?
Well, I think, just as I said, my engineering background really differentiates me. I like to work in groups where we don't really look at, I don't really call myself a leader of these groups, but it's where you really kind of push your egos aside, because those can get in the way of working in a group. A lot of times you get those people who want to kind of beat their chest and lead, and you end up going down solutions that are not really good. But when you can put away your egos, always keep your biases right in front of you. Everyone has biases, everyone has preconceptions. Always keep those in front of you, and then actually work with the people with the facts of the hand and what you have for resources. usually come up with the best solution. And that's the groups that I've always enjoyed the most as an engineer working with. And so those are the type of group I would want to foster among the county, among my fellow commissioners and county employees and stuff like that, so that we can always come up with the most valuable solutions to any problem as they arise. I also, like you said, diverse background. I have a lot of different things I've gone through, and that's really interesting because my hop farm is organic, natural. We do a lot of organic practices, but I come from a very conventional farming background, so I've kind of seen it. I kind of see it all, and I even interface a lot with some even though I'm a Republican, a lot of very left-leaning people, and I'm friends with and interface a lot with in the organic farming industry. And the interesting thing is, I always try to present it as the best way to promote what they're doing isn't by tearing down conventional farming. We got to promote farming as a whole. And when you work with, and we can get rid of us versus them and work together, then those things, you come up with even better solutions. And that's what we do on our farm. It's not organic, but we do use a lot of organic things. But then there's some places where it's like, well, the conventional here works too. So we're always open to a new idea wherever it comes from. And I think that's a very valuable asset.
So management of the county budget is one of the most important responsibilities as a county commissioner. What skills do you bring to the table for budget management, and what priorities do you have to create a balanced budget?
Well, okay, so budget is going to be very interesting. I think that's going to be one of the most interesting things going forward, especially with the financial times that we're kind of heading into. As an engineer, I like to do planning. I like to look through numbers. Every day I'm looking through numbers and making projections and models. And you try to make the best models you can, and the best models actually have to be constantly adjusted. And so that's one of the things is that I would want to do is we want to make even longer term planning, but always keep that planning mobile and adjusted, so that we can always take what our budget is today and make sure that we're getting the best value added out of every dollar spent. And so that's, it's a mix and blend of long-term and short-term planning. I think right now the county's starting to do some pretty good short-term planning, but I haven't really seen a lot of long-term planning being done recently. So, this might be something that we would bring in too. And as for balancing budget, again, it's like numbers are my thing. I'm very good at absorbing numbers and going through numbers and splicing and dicing things up. And so I think that's one of those things where I would probably definitely be looking at the budgets a lot. And if I do find things, I'm going to definitely challenge them. So
yeah, the hardest thing in my opinion that commissioners have to deal with when it's the numbers is that those numbers are tied to real people, real needs. Sometimes it's perceived needs. It's more of a want of what people in the community feel their dollars should be spent on.
Yes, and that's a really hard thing is you gotta, when you get down into those budgets, you really gotta say, these are the things that are required. These are our core things that we have to provide to our people. And then there's these nice to haves, and it's like, boy, that's when you have to make some of those tough decisions and say, this is really a nice to have, and if we can give up this nice to have, we can do this better.
So there have been a lot of conversations about zoning in Yankton County. Can you share some of your thoughts?
Yeah, my experience from zoning, right now it seems like it's easier to open a medical dispensary than to have a small organic hop farm. Zoning is a problem. There's a lot of people complaining about just being ignored, complaints being just not handled, and even to the fact of where the administrator said, I think that at one point said, we're just not going to enforce this law. That's not okay. We can't just pick and choose laws to enforce. We can't pick and choose people who are going to be enforced upon and not enforced upon based on whether they're fishing buddies or so-and-so. So I see the zoning department needing some serious help, because it's not doing enforcement for a lot of people. We've seen multiple complaints in meetings, and we're seeing the county without this planning. It's a planning department. Without that planning in place and without that real kind of leadership or any vision there, things are just kind of being thrown to the wayside. Development is kind of haphazard, and there's not a lot of forethought into things. We have roads being built on half easements, which are causing problems then for emergency management. And these are going to be problems down the road. I mean, we look at 310, and you look at that road, and it's built off. Well, now they're saying, well, that means the county doesn't have to maintain it because it's no longer on a required line, and that creates a whole myriad of issues. Just because they started with building a road, well, we'll just move it off to the side so that we don't have to worry about getting a full easement. And so it's like these little things that seem little today and doesn't hurt anyone, down the road can have huge implications and cause lots of problems.
So do you have any suggestions on how to enhance transparency in Yankton County government?
Well, transparency is an interesting thing. It's more than just a 3-minute session at a meeting in which the commissioners aren't even obliged to answer. Transparency means being very clear about what the county can and cannot do and will do. It means that, that there isn't any secret lists of people or properties. There's no hidden agendas, and there's no cutting laws off, for your friends and family and whatnot. Essentially, transparency, I think, is really easy once you have in place the principles that you're going to follow, the truth, facts, and law. Once you're doing those things, transparency is really easy because the laws are being followed and everyone can look at the laws and say, yes, okay, I see why you say that. The facts, if the facts are really vetted out, then people can see those facts and you can see, okay, this is, not supported, this is supported, here are the facts. And so this is what we have to accept, and these are real things. And so I see the transparency of Yankton County needing help. In the last few years, the lawsuits and everything, we have an integrity problem, we have a transparency problem. And I really hope to work really hard to bring back integrity and transparency in a true form.
So what ideas do you have to foster revenue opportunities in Yankton County?
So this is where my conservative side comes in. Generating revenue, really there's only one way a county can generate its revenue, and that's taxes. For the most part, we're hoping that we can keep Yankton developing. And how do we keep that developing? We keep clear development rules. Laws are being followed, and they're followed equally among everyone. There's no special favors granted here or there because of so-and-so. And then on top of that, we have to make sure that any regulation that we have really truly brings a value added to the constituents. Sometimes there's regulation out there that are just put in because, oh, this is the way they did it way over here in another state. And is that really actually adding any value? Or, a copy and paste regulation can be dangerous because it's not really working for us. So we have to make sure that our regulations are always value added. And so if we can remove anything that's regulations that can be removed to foster development, essentially just letting the government get out of the way. And I think that's the most that the government can do in terms of raising revenue, outside of raising taxes, which I don't want to do that either.
So do you have any ideas you might consider proposing, and maybe it's too early since you haven't already served as a county commissioner, that you would want to take to our state legislators and see if there's some opportunities at the state level to make some changes?
There might be. They're kind of, they're a little bit in their infancy yet. I do have a few ideas. and actually some things that are allowed to be done in the city of Yankton, but we can't do in the county, and to kind of levelize that playing field a little bit for certain businesses and stuff like that. And I think that can help. Those things are going to be a fight because there's some of these things are some traditions that are really deeply rooted in South Dakota. So,
but there are a lot of counties that are struggling financially. Yankton has been doing well.
Yeah, we're very fortunate.
Yes, because we've had strong commissioners who have managed our dollars well, I will say that. But I think there's going to be a time when counties, large and small, fiscally responsible, those who have challenges are going to have to come together and try and figure out are there ways to create new opportunities for counties. So at this time, there's approximately 700 jobs open in Yankton County and about 30,000 across the entire state. Does the county have a role to play in growing the workforce or growing housing opportunities?
Again, it comes back to that. For the most part, the county has to get out of the way of these things, in the sense that making sure that they're not putting in a stop that isn't benefiting anyone. In housing in particularly, one of the problems that years back, the District 3 did a report on various things, and actually one of the big parts was CAFOs in it, and they kind of outlined why things were not suitable for Yankton, and it really comes down to infrastructure. And so our infrastructure plan is really critical to making more housing opportunities housing development opportunities in the county, because without the infrastructure, no one wants to live on a rutty gravel road. And obviously we can't pave everything. So we have to really have a longer term plan and vision when it comes to that infrastructure, so that we know that we have a transportation network that works for the whole county, tries to maximize the service to the citizens, to the residents, and opens up areas for a good development, opportunities. That's going to be a very difficult thing, but I do know that there's a lot of new tools that really can give a lot of deep insight. They're big data tools that I just recently saw some in play at the traffic conference this summer, and they are neat, and they really want to start applying these to rural counties, and because the rural counties have an infrastructure problem. By per mile traveled, they have the highest rates of death and problems on the road. Rural county, and this is coming out of Minnesota's Department of Transportation. They are realizing that that's their biggest hotspot, is the rural networks of roads. So, I think getting some of this longer term planning and thinking about things, and not just thinking about what we can do in the next year or two, but also trying to start creating a plan or a vision towards what our road network should be within 10 years, and where our development areas are best suited. And that's to serve so that Yankton has the employees it needs. And there's opportunities for the smaller towns out there. I think Mission Hill, Utica, there's opportunities that they can become part of this as well.
Yeah, from a housing perspective, Utica has a few new homes in their community, and I know that Gayville's also talking about potential development over there. But it does come down to not necessarily road infrastructure, but sometimes that water or sewer infrastructure that needs to be created or enhanced in order to support the type of development that the community desires.
Or even electrical. I've gotten a lot of people talking to me about this new substation down on Deer Boulevard. and that's really good. There's just, unfortunately, we've developed and didn't think about that, and now it's become a necessity. So
you're right, that long-term planning matters when it comes to that type of infrastructure. So what will you do to make sure that all Yankton County residents, whether they live inside city limits or outside city limits, feel that they're being represented?
Well, I think, again, I have this unique diversity. I've come from the farm, lived 20 years, pretty much 20 years in the cities of all over the country, and then back into the, I live in West Yankton, which is sort of this border range. It's kind of a Yankton, not quite. The biggest key is just really listening. I know there's been some people who like try to associate me with this group or that group, or I'm this person or that person. I don't try to really say that I'm part of any group so much, but I'm willing to listen to any group. And that's the first step, is to always make sure that you're actually listening, never dismiss people. And that's a challenge always, I think, for everyone. Sometimes I catch myself always doing that too, and I was like, oh wait, don't be dismissive. Step yourself outside and actually listen. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, is if you're actually listening. If there's really, really big issues, yes, get out to those communities and actually try to resolve problems. Try to be the resolver and not an instigator. And that's the challenge, and I think that'll keep people pretty happy, I think, for the most part, but I also know you can't please everyone.
Yeah, unfortunately, you cannot please everyone, and every decision you make, there is someone on the other side who is unhappy with that decision. So it makes for an interesting process. So is there anything in closing that you wanted to share with the viewers that was not a part of a previously asked question?
Not much, though. Yeah, one of the things I was realizing is that recently is like there's this code of conduct, and there's like, wow, there's a lot of weird misbehaviors that are happening in Yankton County, and I've talked to a lot of different people, a lot of these people who've encouraged me to run, and the code of conduct really kind of doesn't quite capture all these misbehaviors. I was like, wow, we probably need to update that a little bit better, especially with modern technology. And social media has become a big problem, I think, for every politician.
So you're talking about the code of conduct that was adopted by the county commission.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. So that might be one of those things that I might bring forward early on, is to maybe enhance that a little bit better and make it a little bit more clear, because it's got some fuzzy points. But and then other than that, I just really encourage everyone to come out and just really chat with me. My email, brianheine4yankton@gmail.com. So, or reach out to me on Facebook if they have questions. Come chat. I think that's the best way for me to learn about any issue in the county, and I hope to be a problem solver. So.
Yeah. So from listening to you today, it sounds like you want to listen to the constituents. You want them to reach out so you can hear what they have to say.
Definitely.
Which will help you create.
That's the only way I can do it, because that's the only way I can serve. This is a job of service, and that's the only way I can do this, is if I get all the feedback I can. That's what this is all about. I've jumped in to say I'm going to serve. And that's a position of humility, and you must always listen. So,
well, thank you for putting your name in there, along with Matt Evans, Sherry Loest, Dan Klimisch, and John Marquardt. The 5 of you are running for the 3 spots that are open on the Yankton County Commission. Absentee voting is already available, so you can take advantage of that process, or if you want to vote in person, that would be on Tuesday, November 8th. Ryan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.